awesome things he has done. And Bonnie is one person that knows about those awesome things that God has done. And you see them every day, because I know you've shared them with me. And I first ran into Bonnie by both seeing her the article about her and the social service of Chesterfield that was on your bulletin, and also she gave me a tour around Chesterfield County of all the things that I don't get to see when I drive back and forth on Beach Road. But many of you may not know that Kathy and I, when we had our first meeting about Joyful Journey, Bonnie was there at that meeting. And I want you to share with folk what you thought was important about our celebration and what it was going to be about.
Well, what I always think is important is the going forth and the helping of the people outside of the walls of this church.
But you have a wonderful sense of God's mission in this world. And you didn't want us to just celebrate ourselves. You wanted us to celebrate God at work,
Right.
which you see every day.
Right.
And one of the things that impressed me so much about what you do is your vision of community partnership. And I want you not just doing something for them, but we together doing with each other. So tell me about this this title of yours, this shift, and that shift, and how you...
Given the chance to talk, I will. Y'all know that. So, 38 years I spent as a social worker for Chesterfield County in the city of Colonial Heights, and I retired, and a few weeks later they asked me if I'd like to consider trying a position that nobody had, called we made the name up, a community partnership coordinator, and we sort of made up a little job title, and I was just going to stay there a few months to see how it went. Well, it was great for me, and I think great for the community, and I guess okay for the county. I have to go to the board tomorrow and see if we still will be doing this.
Well, we'll all keep you in our prayers.
Yeah.
I think
we will be. So really had to start focusing, envisioning what this was, and I'm going to be very, honest here. When I first came to church here, which was about 5 years ago, maybe a little more, very soon after coming here, there was a book club. I believe you were in that book club, Nancy. And we read a book called From the Sanctuary to the Streets. It was written by Wendy McKay. Sarah Parkinson, who you all remember, was the treasurer of a group called Embrace Richmond, which Wendy was the executive director of. Wendy lived at the time in Woodlake. That really, so here we are reading a book written by a Chesterfield resident who is a minister, who was saying, get this outside of the church. This is where, there are needs out there. And so I was quite impressed with that. And Sarah brought Wendy here. Wendy worshiped here a few times, if y'all may or may not remember that. So fast forward to 5 years, and so now I have this job, and a member of our board said, come look, who is a minister of a large church, said, come look at what we're doing in this particular community, one of which you saw, Mary. Jeff Davis in the northern part of the Florida, which I'm sure none of you ever go to, but nevertheless it is part of Chesterfield County. And I kind of got smacked in the face and went, oh my gosh, this would be great for this type of project that she was describing in the book. And I called her, and she answered the phone, and 18 months later we were very good friends and moving around this county doing this type of work. So I call it a shift. I call it the paradigm shift. It is very difficult for churches to make that shift, but I'm telling you, every day one of them is doing it. And every Sunday afternoon I call some county administrator's cell phone and say, boy, you should have seen what I saw this week. So it's a move from doing for people to doing with people, to stopping just merely giving, to getting into a relationship and giving of yourself, because that's where the transformation occurs. Not only for the person you think you're trying to transform, but most likely for you and the church too. In fact, I've seen probably bigger transformations there.
One of the interesting phrases that our presiding bishop uses is, she says, it's not so much that the church has a mission, which I think is that paradigm of helping those people. so much as God's mission, God's intention for all people to be fed and cared for, has a church. God's mission has a church. And I think that's the paradigm shift you're talking about. And that's what we're trying to kind of highlight and bring out into the open, is get those pockets of poverty out of the hiddenness and darkness and into the open, so that we can pay attention to the places where God's at work. Tell me one fun story.
And go where they are.
Yes, and go where they are.
Because they're not going to come here.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell me one wonderful story about going to one of those places and having something happen.
One that involves a church is and this is a feeding program. This is a Do For program, but nevertheless, it is a true collaboration of many churches in a particular area of various colors, various denominations, old churches, new churches, churches that have lovely buildings, churches that don't have buildings at all. But they all come together in this particular case on the first Saturday of the month, and they feed several hundred families. And a minister walked up to me one time and said, "This is great what we are doing for these people, but greater than what we have done for these churches, because I am working with churches I would have never spoken to. And now we have breakfast once a month." And they all are within probably a mile radius of each other.
This is what you showed me in Colonial Heights?
Well, no, this is actually up in the northern quarter too. In Ettrick, which is, as y'all all probably know, here I've talked about Ettrick before. You don't need to go to a third world country. Just come down to Ettrick if you want to have that experience. Last Saturday, right before this celebration on Sunday, people came together in a church there, a historically white church, but black and white people sat down together in that church in the pews. We started out very separate. After 6 weeks of meeting, we were very mingled together, and we put on, and it was awesome, a Love Your Neighbor event in Ettrick, Saturday, September the 12th. We had bouncy games and hamburgers and all sorts of things, and people just came to, certainly they ate, but they got loved. And that I think, I think feeding people with food is very important, but most of the people I encounter lack self-worth. And until you can get in that relationship and show them some type of love, you're going to feed them forever, so physically.
That's what I'm so amazed by, is what happens in the transformation of people when you come with one posture and you leave with another, of feeling like you're one of God's people with everyone that's there, and you're all hungry.
Here's a beautiful story. A couple of Sundays ago, and I think I shared this one with Mary. A church in Chester went through the training with Wendy McKay and said, "We can't do this. We don't know how to do this." And finally, we were just like, "Go, pick your community and go." And they wrestled with the community, but they finally picked a community. They went in the community. They were like, "Do we call the police and say we were coming?" No. If you're scared to go, don't go. Went into the neighborhood and did the period of holy listening. Took nothing, because that's hard for churches. And, don't take your food basket, don't take your programs, take yourself and go in there. And they met I can't tell you, I met with them every Tuesday, the most wonderful group of older youth, teenage youth in that community, and paired up with an adult from the church and youth, and they walked that neighborhood and asked, the 5 questions of community development of their own neighbors, whom these youth didn't necessarily know either. What are your dreams for the community? Not what are my dreams for your community, but what are your dreams for the community? And they did the interviews, and then they put it all together. They used technology and put it all together on spreadsheets and wonderful, things. And then they invited their community to come and hear what their dreams were. And the community came for those kids, and they heard what their dreams were. And the community said, "Let's latch on to a dream and do something about it." And they're in the process of doing that. But 4 of the youth from that church, one of whom will be a senior at Thomas Dale, all of them will go to Thomas Dale, one who will be a senior, who was, a really neat guy, but could not speak. So the church said, "Would you like to come to church on Sunday, and would you like to be part of a homily, sort of like this. And he was like, I don't think I could do, anyway, they talked him into coming. He said, I don't have clothes to wear. They said, that's okay, we'll tell everybody to wear jeans that Sunday, you know, it's not a problem. He came, and he stood up in front, this is a big church, he stood up in front of that church and said, 6 months ago, I could not have walked in this church, I could not have stood up here and said this, but look what has happened to me because of what you came to do. And one of those 4 youth that came that Sunday asked to be baptized.
One of the, you have one more good story to tell us,
No,
and then I want to, but no, I was going to, one of the things that is very powerful, I hope we might read this year, is a book called Crazy Christians, which our new presiding bishop has written. And he has this wonderful thing that I say is, I think, saying exactly about a dream. And I think what our paradigm shift in this parish can be is about changing our image of what, our vision of why we're here to God's dream. Let's take hold of God's vision for what God intends for God's people. And Michael Curry has this wonderful way of describing it. He said, some men see things as they are and ask why. I dream things that never were and ask why not. Why not a world where no child ever goes to bed hungry again? Why not? Why not a world in which poverty is truly history, a thing of the past? Why not a world in which every person is treated and valued as a child of God? Why not a world where we lay down our swords and shields down by the riverside to study war no more? Why not a world reconciled to our God and to each other as children of God and brothers and sisters of one another? Why not a world that looks less like the nightmare of our human devising and more like the dream of God's creating? Why not? We who would be disciples of Jesus are people who have made a commitment to follow his teachings, his manner of life, and the loving and liberating reality of his Spirit in the direction of God's great why not, in the direction of God's dream. That's what Holy Scripture is about, and that's what Michael Curry is calling us to follow Jesus as a global community. And I think that's the wonderful image that is absolutely congruent with the one that you've lived for 40 years, and that we are so fortunate to have your eyes and care in this family. Appreciate that greatly. Thank you. And anybody that, if you want a real tour of Chesterfield County, I can tell you this is the woman that'll give it to you. We sat in the parking lot at Ettrick Methodist Church and dreamed dreams, didn't we?
That's where we had that event.
That's where we had that event, right. Oh, wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Yes.
God bless.